Hey there, TNA fam, how's it going? For today, we're back here to talk more TNA wrestling shenanigans at the Impact Zone podcast. And today, I want to talk about Zilla Fatu. You might or might not know much about Zilla Fatu. I know some of you hardcore fans really do know your stuff about some of the indie wrestlers and whatnot around the place. Now, I did do an episode a little while back about like wrestlers that I sort of thought, they could come to TNA or TNA could sign them to bolster up their roster and to sort of get some more young blood in there and to build some more like new upper level guys. I think Zilla Fatu fits into that space. Now, I don't know his contractual situation, so I'm not gonna pretend like I do. But we've seen him in TNA. So if you don't know him, he was in TNA for a brief period of time, at least for one match. He was in there when at Slammiversary, I believe it was there, and teamed to face the Hardys there and whatnot. So, no, it wasn't the Hardys, was it? No, it was who did he face? It was bloody oath. I can't remember. It was Jake something and somebody else. I can't remember. It was a whole bunch of guys. I can't remember who it was now. It's a while back. I believe we talked about that match here and there on the channel here as well. But he's been teaming. The main reason why I said the Hardys is because he's been teaming with the Hardys. He's been doing stuff with the Hardys. I think he's in MLW. I'm not too sure, but he's in Fourth Rope Wrestling, which is which TNA has a partnership with, kind of. They mostly had that partnership for the Slammiversary show. Because it was in New York, and Fourth Rope is mostly in New York, I believe. So Zilla Fatu is a kid. Well, I want to say he's a kid, but he's a young, talented wrestler who I didn't really get to see much of him, but a lot of people are talking about him. Even the Hardys are talking about this guy. And despite my misgivings about their current match quality or whatever it is, sometimes I feel like, well, they don't need to do everything. They don't need to be the ones to do this stuff. That's not their role. But it does suck in some ways that they're the ones going out there and whatnot and holding those titles. I think somebody else should hold those titles, and they should sort of be just chasing after the titles or whatever. But anyway, still, they know what they're talking about. They know wrestling. They've been around wrestling for a long time, so they know what they're talking about when they're talking about. And I agree with them, because I've actually gone out of my way somewhat to watch a little bit, not a lot, but a little bit of some of the stuff that he's kind of been doing here and there around the place. And this kid has got something. This kid, the Hardys said this guy is one of the guys that will be the future of the business. Again, he's a big Samoan, so, well, I say big, but whatever. He's of that Samoan heritage. We look at a lot of great Samoan wrestlers, The Rock, Roman Reigns. Even if you talk about more tag team wrestlers, his dad was Umaga. He had an amazing career, not just as a single star, but as a tag team guy. People forget about his tag team, perhaps, but whatever. It was a thing. Even Umaga, or the people know him most as Umaga, was in TNA. People forget that he was in TNA. Jamal, back in the day. I don't know whether he actually changed his name though. I think he might have done, but I can't remember what his name was either. But still. He did some stuff there as well after he left WWE, and after he left TNA, he did the Umaga stuff when he came back. So that was one of his biggest runs. Um, and yeah, like obviously you've got the head shrinkers and whatnot, the wild Samoans and whatnot, all that sort of stuff. You've got a lot of legendary Samoans that have come through, Alpha, Sika, all that sort of stuff. Like a lot of great performers that have come throughout the years, and whatnot. So yeah, like I think like if TNA was smart, like, and they could say, hey, you know, we'll offer him an opportunity to come into TNA and showcase, not just like this one match. No, we're like, because we've already seen him. He's already performed on one of our shows. Let's actually give him even just a short-term contract or whatever, or even just a handshake agreement of saying, okay, you're going to work with us for a few months, whatever it is, and we'll treat you right and we'll treat you well, and we'll see what we can do with you in 6 months or a year or whatever it is, and we'll go from there. You know, and maybe WWE will pick him up. Who knows? At some point, but like I think if he was to go to TNA, I think he would be opportune, much bigger and better sort of opportunities in that company, because if you're going to WWE, you're not really gonna go to Raw or SmackDown. Realistically, if you're a new guy, like you're very unlikely to go there and do that. You're gonna go to NXT most likely. So, that yes, you can be the face of NXT or whatever, and all of that, but like it's I know TNA is smaller in many ways than NXT, but it's seen so much more positively in some ways because it is its own entity in many ways. It's its own idea, it's its own creation, it's its own creative, etc. Yes, NXT has its own creative, but like that creative only goes to the quote unquote developmental league or whatever. And yes, TNA is a quote unquote developmental league in some ways. Of course it is. Everything is a developmental league in some form or fashion because you're always developing people and talent until they're at the zenith of their abilities. But you should always be training, you should always be improving. There is never a point where you should rest on your laurels or whatever. Or even if you've got to the best place that you can get, it's like, well, I've just got to keep that up. I've just got to keep grinding and doing the best that I can with what I've got, even if I, don't really want to. If I keep showing that initiative, maybe like eventually, like I'll get somewhere, or someone will realize, oh yeah, he actually is doing all this stuff and whatnot and that sort of thing. I think it would be a bigger step up for him to go to TNA than to go to WWE. Honestly, like that's what I'm saying here. If he goes to WWE, he's going to NXT most likely. Like he's probably not getting onto the main roster. And like maybe if he goes to NXT, he might be like a mid-card level guy. Maybe. If he's lucky, he might be like a mid-card guy. Yeah, and in TNA, maybe he'll be a mid-card guy to start out with. Definitely, sure. Same thing. But if you're in TNA's mid-card, it's like there are so many more opportunities. There's not, like I said this before, that even though now they've added a few more names to the roster, like there are still a lot of people like Brian Myers, Eric Young, Kazarian that are in their twilight years. Like these guys will be retiring in the next couple of years. Even like guys like Eddie Edwards and that will be probably retiring in the next few years, or looking to retire in the next few years. You've just had Dirty Dango, JDC, retire, or just about to retire. So again, you're looking at more young guys to fill in that spot. You've got the young Jesse Funaki there. You got Bear Bronson there. So you've got a few guys that you've suddenly sort of started to bring in. You've got the Andersons tag team. You've got the Righteous. That's sort of helping bolster up some of those other divisions and some of those other areas and whatnot that are kind of like lacking a little bit, because you need a fairly deep roster, honestly, for your roster. You know, like, you can't just have 5 guys. You've got to have a whole bunch of people on that roster. Yeah, you've got to have 5 or 6 main guys or gals or whatever in each sort of division, but like everyone else has got to be kind of interchangeable. You've got to be like, okay, you know, let's bring in somebody else, you know, like, let's bring in somebody else here, let's bring in somebody else there. And at a certain point, it does become like, well, we've got too many guys to use them all, but that's not always bad, because it's like, well, a lot of those guys are enhancement guys. So we're like, even if we've got those guys like hometown man Cody Deaner, he's probably close to retirement too, but he is more of an enhancement guy than a lot of people are, because again, he's there for, you know, mostly to get beat or whatever, or mostly for a cheap pop or whatever. So he's not really there for a whole lot. He's only really there for, you know, the fact that he's been there for so long and he's a good soldier or whatever, and whatnot. No disrespect to him or whatever else. But again, like, he's not really doing anything. And I think that's fine with him. He's seems perfectly happy to just, you know, go out there and work and do what he loves, which, fair enough. You know, he was a guy for a long time that has really done not a lot of anything significant. He's had major feuds, but he's never really held a title or really done anything like that. So again, it's sort of like, well, okay, whatever. You know, like, people probably won't remember his name when he retires very much. You know, like, so it is what it is, but still, whatever. But yeah, like, I do think that Zilla could come in and do a whole lot in TNA, because again, you know, there's just so many openings and opportunities. Like in NXT, or, you know, which is where he'd be probably, there's just not as much. You've already got like, yes, like, that roster rotates every few years or whatever else it is, but TNA is currently in that rotating sort of phase sort of thing, and there's just an opportunity for him to come in right now and kind of, you know, hit the ground running, so to speak, rather than going to WWE, taking your chances and crossing your fingers and hoping that at some point, you know, there's somebody like Ricky Saints, or, you know, I know Trick Williams and Obafemi might be going to the main roster as well soon, but like, you never know. Sometimes it seems like a few months ago that Obafemi, you know, when he lost the title, that was the time that he was going to go to the main roster, and he wasn't around for quite a while, and then suddenly he comes back and beats Ricky, who only beat him a few months ago or whatever it was, you know. So I don't really know what he's doing, or whether he's ascending, or whether he's just, you know, they don't know whether they want to keep trying to do stuff with him or what it is, but they are doing things, obviously. But yeah, like, Ricky, I think, is one of their, and so is Joe Hendry, I think, right now, is one of their pet projects that they want to sort of escalate, fast track to the main roster as quickly as possible. But they're trying to get, you know, as much mileage out of them as possible. That's one reason why I think they decided to kind of bring Oba back, because they were like, actually, he's not the guy that we really actually want that much on the main roster. He works better here in NXT. You know, and we think that Ricky would work better perhaps on the main roster. Same with Trick. Perhaps. So we're going to, try to, like, in seemingly at least, like, this is what I'm assuming, that they're going to try to move them both up fairly soon, and Oba will be left, unfortunately, in NXT, at least for now. So, like, yeah, but still, obviously, like, again, like, you could try to fit into a space there, but, like, you're not really like, you could get an opportunity, obviously, pretty early on, but, like, you're not going to take that spot off of Oba, at least for now. Like, so, yes, you could find yourself in that mid-card again sort of space, but I don't really know who else is kind of in that space right now. I don't feel like they've kind of really got that many people in that space right now, but, in some ways he could fit in there, but I just think, it feels like maybe I'm a bit biased towards TNA in that regard, because, like, if, and this is, I guess, only somewhat if you're thinking about him just in the mid-card in NXT, yeah, he could fit in there because there's not that many people there, really. So, or you could fit him in that upper mid-card sort of area, but, like, it would be a tough journey. And I think, like, his journey into WWE actually does have a great story in many ways. So, yeah. But, like, we've heard that WWE is kind of, like, on this don't call us, we'll call you kind of attitude, or whatever you want to call it, or phase, or whatever. I don't know whether they're really looking for people. And sometimes I feel like I don't know whether they know what they're looking for sometimes, because it's like, yeah, you could have a really good, like, mid-card division over there, but it seems like you don't really want to do that. It seems like you just want to say, okay, yeah, we really want main event guys. We don't really care about, like, mid-card guys. Like, yes, we have the mid-card or whatever else it is, but it's just kind of there and kind of exists. We're really more focused on our, main event guys. Ricky Saints, Trick Williams, Joe Hendry, Obafemi, guys like that. Like, and those guys are, like, often get more, like, the main event guys, like Roman Reigns, Cody, those sorts of people. They get more, like, eyeballs on them in general, so that's why kind of management puts their efforts into them more so, I guess. But then again, the problem with continuing to say, okay, let's keep investing in these guys that are already, or, you can keep investing in them, but if you're not sitting there and going, okay, let's find, or let's build up somebody else. It's like, oh, okay, great. All these guys we feel like haven't really hit the mark, aren't really where we want them to be, aren't performing at the level that we want them to be, etc., etc., etc. At that point, you might as well say, well, let's release them. That, or let's just say we don't care anymore. We're only really, like, here for like, and this is what I've said before with WWE, like they don't really seem like they want to do the work. It seems to me that they would much rather, at least on, like, mid-card or whatever, lower card talent, it doesn't seem like they really care that much. They only really care if you're already seemingly that main event level kind of person, or kind of tag team, or whatever. So unless you're a main eventer already, I feel like they're not going to take you. Unless your merchandise and whatnot is already really hot and really selling well, and you've already really well established yourselves at some point or to some extent, they're not interested. They're just like, well, we don't care. We want, obviously, and this is the thing, we want money makers. That's fine. That's their business. Like, but their business is already doing so well. So it's like, yes, they can obviously still make not mistakes, but they still can invest time into other people and other things. And it's not like they don't invest any time in any of these guys, but it certainly seems like they don't really care to invest. But yeah, like I just mean, like, I think TNA is a place where they absolutely have to bring people in and be like, okay, we have got to make this person a big deal, a main event level person, whether that's a main event tag team person or a main event like singles person. They have got to make characters and things main event level, because they've got to, polish the diamonds in the rough, so to speak. I think Zilla is already a really, really polished wrestler, and I don't mean to sort of say that he needs a whole lot, but it's just so many of these little things, and getting opportunities and showcasing what you can do and actually being exposed to a larger audience, because like I said at the start of this, like, not, the hardcore fans do know who he is, but a lot of other fans, maybe they've heard of him, maybe, but probably not, or probably barely heard of him. So their investment or their care for him or whatever else or any of that sort of stuff is just basically zero. So, and like, if you haven't, like, if you come to a WWE audience as, like, I know some people or fans get invested in these young guys, and certainly to say, well, he could be like Javon Evans. He could be in that sort of space where people like go, this kid's got something. He's young, he's hungry, he seems like he could be a big deal in the future. He could be like Braun Breaker. Maybe eventually at some point he kind of gets there. Definitely, absolutely. But I don't know, every time I think about WWE and the way they do things, or the people that they do things with and how they do things, is just, they don't seem to really, really care. They're just like, yeah, whatever. Like, I feel like they're so nonchalant about everything that it's like, yeah, whatever, with everything. I think they're very happy with who they have and what they have, because they have Cody Rhodes, they have Jey Uso, they have like a million names. So they they are building some other guys or whatever, but like, you're still seeing a lot of like domination of the roster by a lot of older, already established guys. And it's not bad to have established guys, but it's like, you're just seeing Cody. You've just saw the end of John Cena, but like, you were just seeing John Cena. You were just seeing CM Punks. Like, it's a long process sometimes to build up these stars. And some of these newer stars like Breaker and whatnot haven't really been there for a long time, but maybe they should have been just pushed harder and more effectively and things like that, because again, like, maybe that's what it takes. I don't know. But then I get the argument of saying, well, if he's pushed too hard, people sort of pull against that unless they're really into him. So it feels like it's got to be a natural thing that the fans do want and do care about and whatnot. So I just think that the fans in TNA, like, especially, like, I think the fans in TNA could latch on to Zilla. But I think, like, with the right story, obviously, there's a very simple and basic story that you would be able to tell with him going into WWE, and you can elevate that and do all of that sort of stuff with him in WWE as well. But I don't think, maybe I think, like, if he's there in TNA for a year or 2 years, or whatever else it is, you can say if he's become to the level of being like close to being that main event guy, this is like a Monty Brown situation where they're like, yeah, we really want to retain him and give him the belt or whatever and do stuff with him. But, here's WWE knocking, so it's like, well, we've done all the work. We've put in all the effort of building up this young guy, giving him opportunities, all that stuff. But here comes WWE, and of course, in some ways, like, you're happy for somebody to be like, oh yeah, that's cool for you to go and chase your dream. We love you, blah blah blah, all that stuff. That's cool, and it is cool. I think, I can't remember, Carlos Silva said this. I can't remember in what podcast or what interview he said it with, but he said, if WWE comes knocking for one of our talents that we've developed, that's a compliment, because that tells us that we've done a good job of developing that talent. Yes, you've done such a good job of developing that talent, that they are now interested. But they're not just interested, they're taking them away from you while you have to go, okay, cool, now we have to start again. So the goal in some ways, like, I think Zilla would go to WWE. So I don't think, like, long term, he's not a guy that you can invest, like, long term in, unfortunately. Maybe if he didn't go to WWE, then or even if he didn't go to WWE for a year or two or something like that, maybe then you could start saying, okay, it's worth investing something in him or putting the belt on him or doing things like that with him. But maybe if it's like only a year, then it's like, oh, okay, well, we really can't push him hard enough, fast enough to get like the things out of him that we think we'd want in that year. Like, I think most contracts are like a year, or most like inevitable sort of handshakes are like a year. We're saying, hey, in a year, we'll come back, or in 6 months, if you feel like, hey, this has been a good experience for me, and yada 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 yada. And maybe that's also already kind of happened, where it was like, hey, we'll bring you in for a show, you'll do a match here, and like da 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 da. We'll see where you're at in a few more months, because we're trying to get more money, and obviously might be interested in you, and you might be interested in us. So we want to see if we can, collab, or not collab, but we can work together. We like each other, like, it's not just the wrestlers in the wrestling locker room that like you. It's the fans, it's, management, it's everything. It's like saying, okay, well, how are we marketing you? Da 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 da, all that sort of stuff. So it's a lot of like, I don't know. It's a lot of thought that goes into it, not just, yes, we will sign. Because, like, especially back then, like, before this AMC signing, I think they had, and, like, a lot of times this was the issue of, like, Scott D'Amore and other people that were like, where's our budget? Like, I know we're kind of in the red, technically speaking, but we need a budget to work with. So if you say your budget for this year is $1,000 or whatever else it is, that's obviously not going to happen, because we need to tour. We need to go places, and maybe we're not going to spend a whole lot on the company dime or on the company thing or whatever else it is. But it is one of those things of saying, well, we need to spend something, because we need to have equipment. We need to have, like the arenas and the sales from the tickets and the pay-per-views and merchandise and whatever else. Some of that has to go to the wrestlers, and some of that has to go to the crew, and some of that has to go back to, quote unquote, the investors or Anthem. So again, well, I think most of it does, but yeah, like, and And I know that they were in debt and whatnot, but still, it's like surely they were paying some of that off. But then again, a lot of these places are like, no, we'll just, even though you've made $1 million in profit or whatever it is, I'm not saying that they did, but whatever. Even if you've made this $1 million in profit and your debt is like $20,000 or whatever it is, I don't know. We're not going to remove your debt. We're just going to say, that's cool, great. Thanks for, $1 million or whatever it is in profit for this year or whatever it is. Great, thanks. But you're still $20,000 in debt. Screw you. You need to specifically say, can we please pay for this debt with some of the money that we earned? Even if you're making us profit, we're not going to take some of our profit and just forget that you are, your debt that we have. And every time that you do something or ask us for money, we're not going to, remember that you made $1 million or whatever it was in profit or whatever it was here, or you made $1,000 there, or you made whatever it was there, or whatever it was. We're still saying, oh yes, you're in debt to us, whatever it is, blah blah blah, this many $1,000 or whatever it is. So that is one of those problems of like upper management and whatnot in the capitalist system and whatnot. But I'm not going into all of that. Like, I'm just saying, like, how somebody can come in and say, right, we have $30 million. Surely we can buy one more wrestler or two more wrestlers. Yes, a lot of that budget has to go to touring and live gates and whatnot, but we were making do with basically no money on AMC, just ad revenue, just, whatever ad revenue we got was what we got. And, whatever ticket sales and whatever t-shirt sales and whatever. But now we have, 30 million. Maybe we only have 10 million this year and or whatever it is. Roughly, at least, let's say roughly. So maybe we don't have that 30 million now, or whatever it is. Maybe we only have 10 million now. That 10 million can still make us a whole lot of things that we need to do, or give us a whole lot of chance to do those things. And wrestlers aren't the only thing that you need. I know people complain about the production, but the production has been pretty good for the most part. Yes, there are times that the production isn't at its best, and they've had issues and glitches and whatnot, and this and that and whatever else, and timing issues and whatnot, and things like that. But, for the most part, if you were to say how much of a percent of this year was good production, you'd have to say, maybe 80%. And 20% bad production sounds fairly big, but I'm pretty sure it's probably less than that. But still, I'd say that's probably, to say that's fair enough. At least it was 80%, at minimum, I would say. It wasn't ever oh yes, half the time it's really bad and the other half of the time it's okay or whatever. It might not be always, in 4K or whatever, but it doesn't need to be. It doesn't need to be in 4K. That's the thing. People complain that this isn't the highest grade of level of production. It doesn't need to be. It's better than just about everything else except for WWE and AEW. And if it's just about on a par with NXT and AEW or whatever, that's where they can be. That's fine. It's been on that. When it's good, it's almost on that level. And, maybe they've had issues with it, but yeah. I do think there are some things that do need a little bit more zhuzhing up or a look or whatever it is, like the hydration desk. Being able to see the control panels is something that you should not be able to see. That is something that should be underneath the desk or underneath a sort of visor of some sort or something like that, so that you cannot see that equipment, because it is a production element that the fans shouldn't see. You know, it should be hidden away so that the desk can look clean and tidy or whatever, and so that it's not that it's not like, oh, all these cables and things going everywhere. And some of the camera focuses, though they're like not what I would call a wide shot or whatever, they need to be somewhat closer in shot or zoomed in on in some shots, because yeah, you can see the back of a TV, that's fine, but you shouldn't be able to see all of the back of that TV. Like, you know what I mean? And in some circumstances, it's like, this is a shot of these two people, Matthew Raywalt and Tom Hannafin, and perhaps you want to see their hands, so that's something else. So maybe you need those monitors to be onto the side, at least for those, like, initial shots of them and things like that, or whatever. Or you need them to have tablets or have something that's underneath the desk again, or underneath the visor of the desk, so that it can't be seen by the camera facing to them. Perhaps it can be seen by the audience behind them or what have you, but that doesn't matter because they can already see the TVs, but they obviously can't hear the announcers' earpieces and whatnot, things like that. And again, like having any kind of like microphone under the ring or whatever else it is, that you can actually hear some of the stuff in the ring, or in the back, or whatever else it is. We're about to cut to camera 2 or whatever, or we're about to cut to main camera or whatever. Anything like that obviously is just like, sometimes you could do it, but I oftentimes would think there's no point in the audience understanding or even hearing that, because you're immersing people in the world of wrestling, of storylines and characters. It should seem like a soap opera or a movie or whatever, or another TV show. It shouldn't seem like, now you get to see behind the scenes of this, and hearing that now we're going to cut to camera 2 and now we're going to cut to backstage or whatever. Like if you're saying, now we're going to hear from our backstage interviewer or whatever. Okay, that's different than saying we're going to cut to the backstage camera, or whatever. Unless it's like something, we've heard that there's a fight or there's something going on backstage, perhaps we could get cameras back there to see what's going on. Unless it's like that, then it's like, don't sort of bring up that you're seeing it on camera. You're not seeing these things on camera. This is just what you're seeing on the screen. Like, this is the movie happening, or whatever, so yeah. But yeah, like, anyway, back, like, I want to finish up with Zilla and say Zilla should be in TNA. Like, if they can get him into TNA and give him an opportunity, maybe he won't be as big in TNA as what he could be in WWE. Like, but I still think you could build him to be a main event guy. Like, I think you could build him into, like, and like, yes, NXT could do the same thing, but like I've just said, for I don't even know how long throughout this, and throughout however long I've been talking about them, that they don't really seem like they want to do that. They don't seem like they want to do these things. They just go, yeah, whatever. A lot of the time, just from what I've seen. I don't think that, like, even though they've got guys like Joe Hendry and these other guys, Ricky Saints and Trick Williams, that are developing well, I think that, like, despite their confidence that those guys could do stuff on the main roster or whatever, they're like, well, if we take these guys off of NXT, then there's no one here on NXT or basically no one here on NXT. Maybe Oba, that's about it. Like, so then what are we doing here on NXT? It's not just saying, oh yeah, these guys are ready for the main roster. That's great. That's cool. But like NXT isn't ready for them to leave. Like, that's the problem. It's like, we need somebody else to come along that can fill their role. But the problem is, once somebody sort of fills that role, we're also going, well, we kind of want them on the main roster now that they're ready to fill that better and bigger role that we would want. So there's none of that in TNA, where it's like you're in the developmental system and you're like struggling to get through that developmental system to try to get onto the main roster. No, yes, there is a not a glass ceiling, but there's kind of that glass ceiling of like you're on Explosion or you're on the more minor parts of the show or less featured or whatever else it is, because again, there's just only so many minutes and so many hours and so many things in the day to focus on. So it's like, well, of course we're going to focus on this or whatever else it is. But yeah, it is what it is. We've got to focus on whatever it is. So, but yeah, and like I understand, like in some ways of them saying, "Hey, we don't really want to take our time to develop these talent that much. Like if they don't develop in a year or two or whatever else it is, that's it. We're like cutting them loose, or we're just saying, all right, well, you're just going to be a jobber or a mid-card jobber or whatever it is then for the next like 6 months to the next year. We don't care. Like that's where you're going to be at, because that's the level of like investment that you have or whatever else it is, or the level of which we see you at, until you improve or until you get to that point of being like a guy that we're interested in, we're not really going to do anything with you. We're not going to roll the dice with you. We've given you 2 years or whatever it's been, so that's it. We're done. We're not really, like, we've told you everything to do, and like if you're just here to just be a mid-card guy or whatever else it is, and that's all you want to do, that's fine with us. We don't really care. But if you're going to come to us and complain to say, hey, where's my big push? Well, that's on you now. You've got to make it happen. You've got to show us why you deserve that and whatever, all that stuff. And that's fair enough, but there's none of that in TNA. There's no, like, as I was saying, there's no, like, you're left off or whatever. But, like, the opposite is true for TNA, where it's like, yeah, it's unlike WWE, where they can be like, oh yeah, we don't really care if somebody gets over that much. Like, we give them opportunities and we see how they go for like a year or 2 years or whatever. And if they don't perform to the level that we want, of course, they're not doing anything, or they're not really going anywhere. They're just kind of here to help the other people that are going somewhere or are doing something else or whatever. But again, like, yeah, like we could do without them. We could bring in anyone and fill that role. So they're interchangeable. It's the guys that are actually doing something and actually, like, we're actually invested in, and the fans are actually invested in, that are the important part. And until somebody is that, like, it does seem like they don't care. So, but TNA has to care, because that's their business to care, because they have to get somebody to be in that position. WWE doesn't really have to do that. WWE, like, even if like a bunch of people retired next year, maybe then they might care, but like I think it'd be a big attitude shift. So I think even then they might not care. They might just be like, oh, okay, well, we'll rush through, because like, again, NXT isn't the thing like that's making them the most money or anything. So it's not like they should really care if it's that successful or whatever else. They're not that worried about NXT being like so successful. They're like, it's at the level that it's at, and whatever. It is where it is. That's fine. We're much more, like, they're much more worried about whether Raw and SmackDown and all the segments in there are doing well. So their level of investment in NXT, though they may have one and they may like genuinely care about some of the wrestlers and some of the stuff that's going on there and whatnot, they don't invest unless that there is a reward or an incentive or a profit, so to speak, to be made. There's not, like, there is no investment. Like, they're betting or they're gambling or they're rolling the dice on somebody, like, a lot of the time. And they're rolling a lot of dice. So the idea is, it's like law of averages. Eventually, like, enough people or enough things will happen where it's like, finally we found our next person that we are actually interested in and will actually, get behind and will actually do stuff with, and they've got it now, and we feel like they're on the path now and whatnot, and they're putting in all the effort and all the work and all this other stuff and whatnot. So now we're really interested. Now we're really invested in this person. Now they're really cooking with gas, and now we're off to the races to do whatever else we're going to do with them. Whereas everybody else is just like, yeah, you're here to help facilitate those other guys. If you're not, only been here for like a year or 2 years, maybe again, like, people still get a little bit of advice or whatever else it is. But I do still think that if somebody's been there and whatnot, and especially if they've been in the business for a while, like, they are very much like, well, the business, what's expected of you here. And that's where I think it is. And that's fair enough in some ways, but it is like, they not give up, but they kind of just give up very easily in some ways. They don't keep trying. But then again, some of the wrestlers just give up or whatever. They're just like, no, I'm happy with my spot or whatever else it is. That's fine. I'm just going to be a mid-card guy. But it's the guys that are kind of like, I want to get to that next level. And I've heard all this advice and whatnot, but it just hasn't translated with. So, I don't know. But anyway, like, if you're in TNA, you're like, yes, you might sometimes be on Explosion or the B show or whatever on the less important, like, show parts or whatever else it is. Especially early on, you might be. But, like, like, and you might see it as the same thing of saying, well, I've got to be in TNA to get to the WWE main roster, or I've got to be in TNA to get to the NXT roster, whatever it is. So it's like, me going to NXT would be more beneficial because then I'm in the WWE system, like, and I don't have to, try to relearn things in the WWE system when I get there. I'm already in there from the beginning, like, or whatever. So yeah, like, I'm already doing that. But, like, again, I still think that it is more beneficial because TNA will probably have to strap the rocket to you because, like, what else are they going to do? Like, they're not going to, like, yes, they've brought in people where it's been like, oh, they seemed like they'd be a bigger deal, but, like, they really haven't yet or whatever. But eventually, like, most people get, like, to a certain point within 6 months or a year. Like, so, yeah, and if you don't, then it's sort of like, well, just the same sort of thing. You're just given the wrestlers and the resources that they have to say, this is the advice that we have, or this is the, because this is TV now. This is real TV. This is, proper, like to a fairly global audience, or whatever. Not to just 50 people in an arena or 100 people or whatever, and that's it. This is hundreds, thousands, millions, whatever of people that you're performing in front of. And that's not just in the US, whatever. So yeah, again, they have that where it's like people know how to perform. Obviously, but like I didn't really say this, but obviously, the decision is up to him and to his lawyers or whatever, whoever's like, he's negotiating with. I'm like, maybe he's negotiating on his own, but like I do feel like TNA could be a good experience for him either way, because it's like, yeah, just it will be so much easier, and the company will care so much more about saying, we want you to succeed. Even if you're going to leave us, we want you to succeed. Like, that's a big vote of confidence, because they want everyone to succeed. And the main reason for that is that leads to the success of the company. So I don't think that, like, yes, they don't have time for people that don't seem to be giving them the same success that they want, which is similar in some ways, but it's like, yeah, like at least you get that opportunity, or at least you seemingly get more of an opportunity, and there is more care, and there is more like time or whatever else, or like they have more of that ability to be like, no, we need to push some more guys. We need to push some more guys. Like we need to have more guys here that we can do stuff with. We cannot just keep sitting here and having, this or whatever it is, because in 6 months or in a year or whatever it is, this person could get signed to WWE, or this person could get signed to AEW, or whatever else it is. So that's why you've got to build people up quickly. You've got to build them up, and again, it's not like there's no good talent in AEW. It's not like there's no good talent in WWE either. There's a lot of great talent in both places, but it's like everyone's competing to get to that next level or whatever it is. So unless you're kind of on that level already, and yes, you could go to WWE and NXT and try to get to that level and compete on that level with those guys while you're in that system, but you could get a foot. Does it take the same amount of time? Maybe, I don't know, but like you might not have as much competition in TNA to get there, so that will make it easier to kind of get there. And then when you get there, yes, you might be like, oh well, now I have even more competition, and now how am I going to deal with that, because I'm not used to it or whatever. But yeah, it's sort of 50-50, isn't it? But I still think, perhaps due to my bias, that it's like, yeah, I'd like to see him in TNA. So I don't know. That's just where I'm at. I just feel like he, a lot of wrestlers, especially younger wrestlers who haven't had many opportunities, should perhaps look at TNA, because it's like, well, am I going to get in with WWE? Maybe, but I've especially if I've been wrestling for a year or two or whatever it's been. Hey, I've been wrestling for a year or two, and they've never really called me or never really shown any interest. Like, I don't know whether WWE has shown interest in Zilla at all. And I don't know how long he's been wrestling or doing stuff. I assume it's been like a while. Okay, I looked it up because I needed to know. He debuted in 2023, so he's been wrestling for like 2 years. He's only 26 years old, or about 26 years old. No, yeah, 26, because September. It's December now. So, yeah, he's only just 26. So, he's been wrestling for a little while, obviously. So, and if you haven't caught the eye of WWE in the last, 2 years, then it's like, well, they probably just aren't either they aren't interested or whatever. So I would say that, you know, taking one, well, maybe even one more year in TNA, it will get you to that next level. Yes, you could get that chance with WWE, but will you really? Like, if they haven't called by now, in my opinion, they're probably not going to call in the next like year or so, unless you really hit like harder and get like to that next level already. Like, they're probably not interested. So, that's where TNA is. Like, yes, you could go to AEW and try to do the same thing, but like AEW is very crowded. Like, and like right now, like there's been a lot of people go there, and it's like, nah, they had a good moment, a good debut, and that's about it. Like, they're just there now, and like they're floundering, not just because they're not talented or whatever else it is. It's because they haven't really been given anything, and they're just like floundering among the sea. They're just lost in the shuffle because there's no real, like, there's not enough direction there, and whatnot. But still, yeah, those are my thoughts, and I can't believe I've been talking so long about this. But yeah, like, those are my thoughts on this situation with Zilla or whatever, because he has turned up in TNA. So I'm like, that's something, and that's TNA showing, hey, even the fact that he was only in that match for like 5 minutes or whatever it was, and he didn't get the win or whatever, it was like, yeah, but like they're giving him an opportunity on pay-per-view, I believe, or was it the pre-show? I can't remember, but anyway, they're giving him that opportunity to come in and say, this is us, this is you, let's meet, let's work together, let's have a match here tonight, and da 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 da. Maybe we'll see you soon, and we might be offering you a contract. So, and I think I hope that Zilla would want to come to TNA, even just for a short period of time, to kind of do stuff and hone his craft, and to try to get into that WWE system, if that's what he wants to do. I don't know. But maybe he wants to be a TNA guy. I don't know. It's up to him to decide what he wants to do, as I said. But yeah, I just feel like it would be a good fit and all that. So yeah, those are my thoughts. That's my statement. We're done here for today, and I hope you have enjoyed it, and I hope you'll join me again in another one.